In this video, we're going to take a look at how to name binary ionic compounds. So remember that compounds occur when you have two or more different elements combined. So for example, if you have H2O, that's a compound because you have hydrogen and oxygen chemically combined together. They're joined. However, if you just had H2, that would not be considered a compound. That would just be called a molecular element because it's two of the same elements combined. And simply having something left, let's just say Na, that's just an element. We call this one here a molecular element because it's a molecule. It's two elements combined, but it's two of the same. Whereas here we call this a compound because it's two different elements combined together. And here it's just an element not combined with anything else. So we're going to start off by taking a look at a specific type of compound called a binary ionic compound. Binary refers to the fact that there's two elements in it. So sodium chloride is a binary compound. There's sodium and chlorine in it. And ionic refers to the fact that it's made up of a metal and a non-metal specifically. So if you look in your periodic table, you'll see that sodium is a metal, chlorine is a non-metal, and that makes that an ionic compound. Ionic compounds form by transferring electrons. So you can see here that sodium loses one electron to chlorine over here, like this. And so sodium becomes charged with a positive one because it lost one electron, and chlorine becomes charged with a negative one because it gained an electron. And now that they have opposite charges, positive one and negative one, they attract to each other. And so this over here is a sodium chloride crystal. So when you look at salt in a salt shaker, it exists in this structure here. This is called a crystal lattice. And it's basically just a crystal of sodium and chloride ions connected together because they have opposite charges because of the electron transfer. So again, ionic compounds form by transfer of electrons specifically. And like I said before, we're focusing on binary ionic compounds, which are ionic compounds that have two or more different elements in them, specifically a non-metal. Well, I'll write a metal first because metal comes first in the formula usually. A metal and a non-metal. Like that. And again, they form by electron transfer. Just to show you that with Lewis structures, here is sodium. It has one electron, one valence electron, since it's in group 1. This is chlorine. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 valence electrons since it's in group 17. Sodium loses the electron to chlorine. Usually metals lose and nonmetals gain because nonmetals hold on to electrons more tightly and metals don't. When that happens, sodium becomes positive because it lost one electron, so positive 1. And chlorine becomes negative because it gained one electron, so negative 1. If it gained 2 electrons, it would be negative 2, so on and so forth, but this here is sodium chloride. Binary ionic because you have a metal and a non-metal, and it's only 2 elements. So, 2 different elements. So we're going to take a look at how to name these binary ionic compounds. There are certain rules for it. Every type of compound, if it's different, has different naming rules, and we're going to focus specifically in this video on binary ionic compounds, how to name. In the next video, we'll see how to write formulas for it. So, nomenclature just means naming. Suppose I want you to name the binary ionic compound KBr. First of all, you'd have to realize it's binary ionic. Binary because there's 2 different elements. Ionic because we have a metal and a non-metal. So what you do first is you name the metal, which is usually the one on the left, the first one that you see. And so if you look at KBr, K is the metal, so we call that potassium. So that's simply potassium. The next part is where you have to change the name a little bit. You look at the non-metal Br, which is bromine. You change the ending to bromide, to IDE. So bromine becomes bromide. You change INE to IDE. So that means that the name of this compound is potassium bromide. Like that. Here there's examples of how to change the ending of other nonmetals. So bromine, bromide, pretty easy. Chlorine, chloride, you have to memorize that. Hydrogen's a bit different. It becomes hydride. Iodine becomes iodide. Nitrogen becomes nitride. Oxygen, not oxygenide, but oxide. Phosphorus becomes phosphide. Sulfur becomes sulfide. So you do have to memorize those. What I want you to do is I want you to try this problem here. Try to pause the video and attempt to name CaF2. Look at the rules above. Try to follow the example. Model the example that was just done. So if you're following the example, this is what you should have received for your final answer. The first element, the metal, is calcium. The second element over here is fluorine, but you change the ending to IDE, so calcium fluoride. If you can't remember the names, they're in your periodic table. When you go to the periodic table, you'll see the name written at the bottom. So for example, if we go to your periodic table here, you'll see that Ca is calcium, you'll see fluorine is fluoride. So you have to know how to make use of your periodic table. All the names are there. By now, you should know names at least for the first 20 elements. The more you practice, the more you'll know. So that's how to name binary ionic compounds. You can try these problems here, and then you can check your answers afterwards. So pause the video and then check your answers. So hopefully you paused the video and now you're just checking your answers. AlF3, that would simply be aluminum, fluoride. MgS would be magnesium, sulfide. CaF2 we already did above, so just take a look at the previous example that we did. HCl is interesting. That one's not really a binary ionic compound. You'll see there's two nonmetals there, so we'll revisit this one later. For now, if you called it hydrogen chloride, that works because sometimes hydrogen acts like a metal. It was just a bit of an exception in there, and we'll see why later on. So don't focus too much on that one, focus on the rest. K2O, potassium oxide, LiI, that's an I there. Lithium iodide, Na3N, that's sodium nitride. ALP is aluminum phosphide. And MgCl2 is magnesium chloride. In the next video, we're going to take a look at how to name how to write formulas for binary ionic compounds. So in this video, we saw how to name them. So if you were given the formula, you would then convert them into a name. But in the next video, we're going to go the other way around, where if you're given a name, you're going to learn how to convert them into formulas and figure out what the small numbers are at the bottom using the periodic table.